in the months following the bizarre disappearance of Evelyn Hart. During her late-night train ride in 2011, the town of Greybridge had settled into a tense silence, like a place waiting for something to happen but pretending everything was fine. People walked quickly after dark, locked their doors earlier, and avoided conversations that might lead back to the incident. Everyone was secretly terrified to think about. Among them was a young bookstore clerk named Mara Ellington, quiet, observant, and someone who, despite trying not to, constantly replayed the details of Evelyn's case in her mind. She had ridden the same train route for years, and something about Evelyn's story clung to her like a shadow she couldn't shake off. Mara worked evening shifts at Pagetern Books, a dusty old shop tucked between a cafe and an antique store. Most nights were uneventful. She shelved books, made tea, and watched the streetlights flicker from the window. But one rainy evening, just as she was preparing to close early, she noticed a man standing outside the store, drenched from the storm, staring directly at her through the fogged glass. He wore a dark coat, hood pulled low, and although she couldn't see his face clearly, Mara felt a sudden jolt of recognition she couldn't explain. She hesitated before unlocking the door and calling out to him. "We're closing soon, sir." He didn't move at first. Then, slowly, he stepped inside. The bell chimed softly, sounding far more ominous than usual. "I'm looking for a specific book," he said, voice low but steady. "A train timetable from 2011. Do you have one?" The question stunned her. Who asks for a decade-old train schedule? Why that year? She asked before she could stop herself. The man lifted his head just enough that she saw the pale outline of a scar running down his cheek. "I believe you know why," he replied. Her pulse quickened. "I don't," she lied. He gave a faint, unsettling smile. "You've followed the case." Evelyn Hart. Mara's breath caught. She had never spoken to anyone about her interest in the case. She barely even mentioned it online. "How do you know that?" she whispered. "Because," he said, leaning slightly forward, "people who are afraid always look the same. And you're afraid of the same thing I am." Her hands trembled around the book she was holding. "What are you afraid of?" she asked. "The truth," he said, "and the thing that took her." Mara wanted to run, but her feet felt anchored to the floor. "Took her?" The police concluded she vanished. "Yes," he interrupted coldly, "but people don't just vanish between train cars. Not without help. Not without someone watching." Before she could speak, he placed a damp envelope on the counter. "I need you to hold this for me. If I don't come back by tomorrow, open it." "Why me?" she demanded, but he was already turning toward the door. "Because you're next," he said softly, as if it were merely a fact and not a threat. The bell chimed again, and he vanished into the storm. Mara locked the door immediately, heart hammering hard enough to feel it in her throat. She looked at the envelope. No name, no address, nothing but her growing dread. She tucked it under the register and tried to tell herself she wouldn't open it. But she already knew she would. That night, she barely slept. Every creak of her apartment felt like footsteps. Every gust of wind like someone whispering outside her window. By morning, she rushed back to the bookstore, hoping irrationally to see the strange man waiting. He wasn't. Hours passed. By 6 p.m., she gave in and tore open the envelope. Inside was a single photograph, grainy, taken at night. It showed the inside of a train compartment, and sitting in the corner, staring at the floor, was Evelyn Hart, alive, or at least, still present in that moment. Mara's breath hitched. Evelyn's clothes matched the description from the 2011 incident report. But what chilled her entirely was the reflection in the window beside Evelyn. The hooded figure, The same silhouette that had been described by witnesses. The same figure people swore they had seen in the woods near Graybridge. The same figure from the illustration Mara once saw online. And behind the reflection, barely visible, was another face. Mara's. She staggered back, knocking over a stack of books. This made no sense. She had never been on the train with Evelyn. She hadn't even lived in Graybridge in 2011. Her hands shook uncontrollably as she turned the photo over. 3 words were scrawled on the back. It follows patterns. That night, Mara couldn't go home. She rode the train instead, unable to explain why, but feeling as though the answer to everything waited for her there. The cars were nearly empty, dimly lit, rattling through dark woods. She sat near the window, clutching the photograph, replaying the events of yesterday. When the train entered the longest stretch between stations, the lights flickered. The air cooled suddenly. The window beside her slowly fogged over from the outside. And then she saw it. A shadow, moving along the glass. A figure, hooded, unmistakable. Mara froze, unable to breathe. The train lights flickered again, off, on, off, on, then completely off. In the darkness, she heard shuffling. A whisper. Her name, Mara. Her breath caught as something brushed her shoulder. The lights snapped back on. She whipped around, no one there. But on the seat across from her lay a folded note. Hands shaking, she opened it. You saw the photograph. You know the pattern. She vanished in the dark between stations. And now your turn is near. Her heart pounded. She stumbled into the aisle, rushing toward the conductor's car. But halfway through the next coach, she stopped dead. A man sat alone, hood pulled low. The same man from the bookstore. But he looked different. Pale, faded, as if he were barely there. You shouldn't have opened the envelope, he whispered. What is happening? She cried. What is that thing? Not a thing, he said weakly. A presence. A shadow tied to the tracks. It takes those who dwell too deeply on what they shouldn't. Then why me? She demanded. Why Evelyn? He looked up slowly, eyes hollow. Because some mysteries feed on attention. The more you follow them, the closer they come. Suddenly, the train screeched violently, throwing Mara forward. The lights burst and shattered. Darkness swallowed the car. She heard a scream, his scream, and then silence. Cold, suffocating silence. When she scrambled to her feet, breath shallow and ragged, she fumbled for her phone's flashlight. The beam illuminated the aisle empty. The man was gone. Only his coat remained on the seat. Mara backed away, trembling, as the train slowed to a stop at the next station. When the doors slid open, she ran. She didn't stop running until she reached her apartment. She locked every door, pulled every curtain, and sat on her bed staring at the photograph. But it had changed. Now, in the window's reflection beside Evelyn, the hooded figure wasn't there. Mara was, standing behind Evelyn, watching her. Breathing hard, Mara dropped the photo. Her phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. You looked too closely. And now, it's your turn. As she stared at the screen, the lights in her apartment flickered.